Hey guys! So in this video, I wanted to share with you guys how I paint lighting in PROCREATE, specifically for portraits and characters. This is kind of a more in-depth extension, I guess, from my previous video on how to paint portraits, which I'll leave a link for in the description below. So to start, I've already got my base skin color down, and I'm just going to start painting some shadows first. I just find it easiest to work from dark to light, so I'll kind of build up my shadows and then add lighting later. So I'm going to start by creating a new layer and setting it to multiply. I'm also going to set it to clipping mask over my layer that my base colors are on, so this keeps my shadows from escaping onto the background, and it's just easier to change something if they're on separate layers. So I'm going to pick a sort of grayish red to start for my shadows, and like I said, I'll continue to kind of build them up, so this is just for a starting point. Whenever you're painting shadows and lighting, it's really important to keep in mind where your light source is coming from. So for this one, I'm just imagining my light sources coming from the top, which means there's going to be shadows under like the character's eyebrows, under the chin, the nose, the lips, etc. I'm not using a reference in this example, but if it is more of a dynamic lighting situation, it definitely helps to use references. There's a ton of references on Pinterest that you can find for whatever lighting scenario that you want. And yeah, so once I have my initial shadows down, you can see that the colors kind of look really bland right now. So to bring some warmth to those shadows, I'm going to take an airbrush and just kind of lightly add in a more saturated red to some of the shadows on the same multiply layer. I'm not going to make the whole shadow this red color, because then it kind of defeats the purpose of using that grayish red in the beginning. Instead, I'm just adding spots of this new color just to bring some depth to the painting. So it's giving me more color variations without drenching the whole thing in this bright red color. I'm also going to add some blush to the cheeks and add some base colors to the eyes and lips. Typically I do this at the beginning, but I was originally just going to show the lighting for the skin, and then I realized how weird that would look if I didn't paint the eyes at all. So yeah, my bad, we're just fixing that now. And then I'm going to take the darkest color on the canvas and use it to further define some of the lines that I had initially. I'm especially focusing on the face, which is my focal point. This is just going to help bring some more definition on where I want the viewer to look. And in contrast, it'll bring less definition to the rest of the painting, where I don't necessarily want the viewer to look initially. Okay, so we've got some shadows defined, and now I want to start adding my lighting. So to do this, I like to add a new layer and then set it to either overlay or soft light. I'm going to take a light pink color and add it to the area where we typically see most light on the face. So this is going to be the cheekbones, the top of the nose, the corner of the eyes, and the top kind of edge of the lips. It helps to think of the planes of the face and just think about where the light would be hitting. And I'll smudge out some of these shapes, but I also want to keep some sharp edges just for contrast. If I were to get rid of all of the sharp edges, it would kind of make it look super airbrushed, which I don't necessarily want. You want kind of a contrast of sharp and blurry edges. And then just like my shadows, I want to build up my lighting. So I'm also going to take these areas and add another overlay layer where I'm going to add this bright yellow to highlight some of the specific areas. So you can see this really bright area in the corner of the eye, the tip of the nose, and I'll also add some highlights to the eyes. And I like using my lasso tool for these highlights just to give it some crispiness. And yeah, something I've been recently doing is adding cool color into the shadows. This just helps give the shadows a lot more depth, and it also adds some contrast with the warm colors that I laid down earlier. And then from this point, it's mostly just rendering and defining shapes with the colors that I already had laid down on the canvas. I'll play around with color balance and maybe add some fun details, but as far as lighting goes, this pretty much is my process. So like I said, you want to kind of start, me personally, I start from dark to light, so I would start with the shadows and then kind of work on building them up. And I tend to start with like a airbrush or just something with not a lot of crisp edges, just kind of lightly put where I want all my shadows to go. And then I'll go in further and maybe add some like darker shadows and add some warmth to it if I want, if I feel like it needs it. And then I'll go in with lighting. And again, you want to kind of build up your lighting until you get to the very, very end where you add like the crisp highlights. And yeah, that's the most fun part to me. But you have to be very patient and work up to that. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. I hope you guys found this helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.